And for the first time in 2 weeks, we are live. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Soul Survivor podcast. Ryan and I back to discuss Survivor 46, Episode 6. How you doing, Ryan?
I'm good, Dylan. Great to be back. Yeah, unfortunately, weren't able to make last week work. I mean, I myself have just been away basically every weekend of March, but now that we're out of that, I will have a bunch more time. Looking forward to recording for the rest of the season. And I feel like it's kind of symbolic in a way. The first few episodes started slow. I've been a bit busy, but now that things are opening up, Banu's gone, the season's opening up, and I think we had a good episode, Dylan.
Yeah, I enjoyed this episode. I think, we've had definitely a slow start to the season. There's no denying that. And we spoke about it a couple weeks ago. That's kind of been the storyline. But, we were just talking like the last two episodes have been pretty good. So I do have faith that this season ends up picking up and being a solid season. But yeah, good Mergatory. I'm excited to talk about it.
Yeah, no, Mergatory, it's interesting with Mariah being the boo, because we usually start with our headline, then we go through the episode. I meant to text you and your brother this theory, I just forgot to do it, but like I had a really good feeling. I would have put money down that one of Mariah, Kenzie, or Venus were going to go with this episode, because what's happened in the new era in this Mergatory episode, Dylan, is that it's never like the big threat. It's never the Hunters, the Jonathans, even like the Shans or the Ricards. It's usually the person that comes in from the majority that the majority is willing to just like discard and like say, we'll kind of sacrifice you. Like it was it was Sydney in 41. It was Lydia in 42. It was Ellie in 43. It was Josh in 44. Last season was Jay Maya. I know Kayla played the shot in the dark, but it was Jay Maya. And now it's Mariah. So basically it's always the tribe that comes in with a lot of numbers and like, you know what? We're a big threat. We're going to sacrifice somebody. And so I had a good feeling it was going to be Mariah. If not Mariah, then Venus. So
It was interesting the way it all played out. I know a lot of people don't like Mergatory, or at least like are getting tired of the way that it's kind of playing out in the way that you have said. Like it's the same type of person that's going out every time. I think to look, if it were up to me, I say just do a normal merge. Maybe wait another episode or two and then just do a normal merge. Because like at the end of the day, there were only what, 6 people available to go home, and
yeah.
sometimes some seasons, depending on if the person picks right or not, it's 7. But yeah, I mean, came down to Mo or Venus. I had a look the entire episode. I don't know what you think. I kind of had a gut feeling that Venus was gonna stay because I just feel like that she's been built up as like a important character. I feel like we've got a lot from her so far, and Mo, it just like I didn't get the same vibe from her. So at the end of the day, we end up losing her. I thought that, and maybe it's just the way that it's edited. I didn't read her exit press, but like based on what it looked like, I feel like that her like having the big reveal at tribal council, at least that's how they made it seem edited. Like she kind of revealed she was like, well, like I am on the bottom. Like I last week wasn't a unanimous vote. I was on the outs. It was almost like I felt a little like too little, too late. But did she mention in her exit press if that was like the first time that she actually revealed that, or did they edit it that way?
I looked at some of the exit press. I didn't get to all of it yet, but basically, like you said, was kind of her first time really mentioning that she was on the outs. And I think to your point, I think it was a little too late. Kind of was like a Hail Mary in a way. And I think in concept, it's the right idea to do. Like obviously, the minute you're at camp and Siga's like saying how tight they are, and everybody's noticing that, I think before they left for tribal, she could have probably mentioned that, and I think Q would have taken it better. But I think, like Q pointed out at tribal, it's too little, too late. We've already seen how tight Siga is. You put together a whole convoluted lie just so you could kind of mask how tight you are, and now I really can't trust you. So I do think it was the right move from her if she had done it earlier, but at that point it was too little, too late. And then any hope of like her fellow Sigas trying to work with her after that, after she kind of just like went for the Hail Mary, it was never going to work. So
yeah, I think. Look, if you're going on Survivor in this new era, I think that if we've kind of seen it every season now. Like it's very rare for somebody who doesn't make like insanely good connections in the pre-merge to like end up kind of going far and winning the game. Like I think if you're Mo and you get left out of an early vote, your only choice, in my opinion, is to you have to jump ship. Like you have to. I don't understand why. I think she was like, she was like, well, Siga has the numbers, so maybe I'll just like stick with them. That was, I guess, her thought process. But I think like even if she had stayed, that she was going to be a name that was probably thrown out again next week, knowing that she was on the bottom of that tribe. So if I were her, I would have I think at that point, you just have to just be kind of a floater and just, kind of pull like almost like what Qatar did last season. I think she did it pretty well. She was on the bottom pretty much the entire game. But at the end of the day, like she ends up getting pretty much all the way to what? Final four, right? So she did a good job of like making herself useful to other players in the game that needed her as a number. And I think if you're like in Mariah's spot and you're like, well, that went bad for me, I got left out of a vote. I think her best move would have been to just, be a floater and try to be useful to others and be open about her being left out rather than like lie to Q and be like, it was a unanimous vote. And then all of a sudden they're looking at her tribal, like, well, you just lied to us and said it was unanimous. So that's kind of my thought on the whole thing. But yeah, I think I feel pretty good about that take. Like if you do get left out early, like you're in trouble in the new era. Like it's not good.
Yeah, I feel like the meta, Dylan, is kind of like flipped, where I feel like in old seasons you never wanted to reveal those cracks because you think of like South Pacific where it was so obvious that Cochran was on the outs, coach gets Cochran a flip, that whole season changes, and I feel like the perception was no, if we're a the Boston Rob thing in Redemption Island, we want to come into the merge as a tight unit. People can't crack us. So we're going to stay strong. We're going to roll our way to the end. And by showing those cracks, you kind of, open yourself up to be knocked off. The problem is the meta is now shifted in the new era where it's like, well, now, like I just told you, all these big tribes are losing people because at the merge, they're a tight group. They're not going to flip on each other. And Q says, I would rather work with Nami because Venus hates Tevin. Liz hates Soda. Soda hates Venus. Like they all hate each other. I want to work with them because they have cracks I can kind of infiltrate, whereas Siga is not budging at all, and I don't like that. So we're going to go, Yanu and Nami are going to team up against Siga. So I feel like the whole first thing is shifted in a way. So even though Mariah could have done things differently, I'll give her like a slight pass because I also feel like the Siga strategy was not good here, them coming in like a big tight unit.
I agree. It definitely comes off as threatening, and it's funny because they didn't even see the last season, right? If they had seen 45, then they would have even been more threatening to the rest of the tribe coming in strong like that. Let's talk about though, like I think the big storyline of this episode, one of them was the alliance of six, like the imaginary 6-person alliance, right? Obviously last week I know we didn't have the podcast, but they go on a journey. We get Hunter, we get Tim, and we get Q, and they're like, let's team up and each bring one more person and have a 6-person alliance at the merge. So they each go around like, who are you going to take? Hunter is like, I'm going to take Tevin. Tim is like, I'm going to take Maria, and Q's like, Tiffany's my number one. Us 6 will be the 6 at the merge. And then we find out this episode that Tim never let Maria know about the alliance, and Maria does not feel like Tim is even anywhere near her number one, which is so interesting. I think it's like a testament to like the social game that Maria is playing compared to like the social game that Tim is playing. Like that's like the perfect like example of like social, like good social game, right? Like she has so many options. She has literally people like trying to rope her in that she's like, well, I have the option there, but like I don't know if it's the best for me. Like I could go with that option if needed, but so what do you think of this cross tribal alliance?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that it's something that is going to be a thing going forward, or do you think it's something that like I'm trying to like figure out if it's just like a storyline that doesn't really have a meaning, or if it's something that like is going to come back and be like, this was important that we heard this early on because these 6 are voting together now at X episode in the future. Like I'm 50-50 on it. I don't have a good vibe yet.
So I think it's tough because, in the past, exile alliances or cross-tribal alliances haven't really like worked out. You think of Tocantins where, Steven and Taj try to make an alliance with Brendan and Sierra, and it just kind of falls apart because similar to Tim, Brendan really never commits to it up front. And they're like, you know what? Brendan's non-committal. We're just going to get rid of him. And we'd rather go with Jalapao. So it's kind of similar in a way where Tim, maybe if everything works out in a perfect world, he rolls forward with the Journey 6. But he's like, you know what? We're early in the merge. I want to keep my options open. I'd rather stick with Siga. And that kind of bites him in the butt because now it's like, Siga's going to crumble a little bit because you guys were too tight. You didn't tell Maria right away. And even though she's open to it, Maria's a very savvy player who's going to keep her options open. And she doesn't even, like you said, she doesn't even consider you her number 1 or number 2. She considers you maybe 3rd on that list. So it's kind of like, I kind of feel like it's, it could work, Dylan. I think more likely, if I have to think about where the story's going, obviously the most likely scenario is that it cracks, like all cross-tribal alliances try to do, where eventually they're going to kind of cave in on each other. Or I could see this being a situation where, Tim and Maria kind of get shoved out and it becomes a Journey 4, because it seems like Tevin and Hunter had a pretty good bond right away with Q and Tiffany. So I could see those 4 trying to roll forward, but I guess we'll see.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things, like, in theory, it works, right? It's like, I think also a big part of this is, and they said it, like, Hunter, if you're Hunter, you need to make sure that every single threat possible is in the game. Because that's your only way, is just like convincing other people that there are bigger threats left than you. And I think Q, he's like the next biggest person. So it makes sense, like, keep Hunter around as long as possible, just like kind of hide in the background, even though the way he is, he's like very loud. So it's like not, it's not, like, having Hunter in it will at least be some sort of shield for that. And then Tim, like, I don't know what to think of Tim. I think he has like potential as a player. But now I'm starting to think that after all this stuff this week, I get a vibe that maybe he doesn't have much more time left on the season. Because it seemed like Hugh is like a little bit sketched out by him, and Hunter, they were like, how do you not tell Maria about the alliance? So, but yeah, in theory, I think it works. But do I think it actually works? I'm not sure. All right, where else should we hit next? We could just go in order and start back from the beginning. But what do you think? Anything else you want to touch on?
In terms of actually, I will say one thing in terms of big highlights, and then we can kind of go through the rest of the episode. I think when you talked about Mergatory, since this is that episode and people have many thoughts on it, I mean, obviously, first and foremost, obviously it's better without the hourglass. So obviously the last 4 seasons have been better than the first 2 iterations with the hourglass. But I just still feel like my biggest problem with it, like, I don't mind if you want to split the tribe up in some way. I just don't like how we get it 2 weeks in a row where now we're going to get the split tribal next week, where I don't mind a split tribal, or I don't mind half people being safe. Just like, don't give me 2 different rounds, so to say, of that happening. Just make it happen once, or like you said, just delay Mergatory a week. My other problem is that, like, when you have these people and then you only have half of them safe, the people that are vulnerable really have no other option but to go with what the safe people want. Like Venus, and we'll get into it in the episode, Venus tries throwing out Charlie's name, and that could have immediately sent her home if Q wasn't already threatened by Mariah. Like, when you are not safe, and this happened to Ellie as well, I think, in 43, where, like, you can't be throwing out names when you're not part of the safe people, because then it's like, they think, oh, well, you shouldn't be scheming. You're not safe yourself. You don't have any authority to tell us who to vote for. So your only option there, even though I think Venus had a good idea to try to go for Charlie, even though it was a good idea, I just feel like you're forced because of Mergatory to just kind of keep your head down and just whatever the group wants, like anybody but me, just go with it for now. So
yeah, I agree. She really, it was a good idea. Like, it was a good idea to try to push Charlie's name. I think you don't really have a choice if you're not safe, and that's one of the issues with Mergatory. Like, if you've looked at social media, Venus has been very vocal about not liking the rest of her cast, disagreeing with what was going on. Seems like she has a lot of leftover frustration from whatever happened. So we'll see how the rest of the season goes. I think another thing that's pretty clear, while we're on the topic of Venus, we may as well talk about it.
Sure.
I had like pretty high hopes for her early in the season. I think this episode, I was like, she's done. She's probably has like a couple episodes left max. I just think that she doesn't have anybody that trusts her. Literally not a single person. She doesn't have anybody that she could go to, and how is she stringing together a vote? Like, nobody trusts her, not a single person. It would be extremely difficult for her to get numbers in any situation. I think that they're all like, they went with Mo this time, but I think that they all know that if they need to vote somebody out, Venus is definitely an option. So
Yeah.
it's like it's tough for me to imagine her turning it around in terms of like her social game, like just because she doesn't have anybody. The one person that she did have got medevaced, and that was it.
Yeah. I mean, you never want to read into the edit too much, and you don't want to read into social media because it could be misconstrued in different ways, and we don't want to like spoil ourselves. But like you said, from jump, when she has these struggles in the game and she's kind of blasting her cast on Twitter, you probably think like her odds of winning maybe aren't great. Like whether she goes soon or whether she gets dragged to the end, like you feel like it's not looking good for her. But again, you never know. She could pull off an upset. She could be that person who everybody wanted to target, and she somehow finds her way to the end, and that's her story. So you never know. It's never too late. Gabler won, so post Gabler, anybody can win at this point.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But I will say though, to talk about the good, I think you and I are right. I think you called it early on. Venus is going to be a great player. She'll be a fan favorite, and I think she's delivered so much, not just in her confessionals because she's very bitey. She's kind of like, I almost want to say like a very new era version of like a Courtney Yates, where I feel like she's very biting in confessional. She's very blunt. I hope they choke on their merge food. Like she's just very old school petty, and I really like that about this cast. Like even Q, who I know we like, but both of us like Q as well. Q is also like very petty as well. So I feel like she's delivering as a character, and I think she has the right mind for the game. She just does not have enough agency yet to act upon it. So I would love to see Venus get her feet under her and make a move, whether that's against like Tevin or Soda. But like as of right now, like you said, she's kind of in a really tough spot.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. She's been great. I've enjoyed watching her. I actually think like, and this would open a whole nother door like of conversation I don't even want to get into right now. But she's been like a product of being kind of screwed by the 3-tribe format. Even like I'm so tired of the 6-person tribes to start out, because like let's say like if you just have less options. Your number one gets medevaced, and it's like, oh well, now the other 4 on your tribe are the only ones left, and it was you were already down in the numbers 4-2. Like, all right, what are you gonna do now? Like, so if you put that type of player in a 9v9 or 10v10 type scenario with the tribes, then there's just more options. So I'm ready to switch that up, but that's a conversation for another day.
All I'll say on this, because I've beat this to death. Brett and I talked about this before, Dylan. I've said this a million times. Jeff's like not changing his mind. I just want something different. Like if Jeff doesn't want to do 2 tribes, then fine. Keep me at 3 tribes of 6, but then give me a swap. If you don't want to do a swap, then give me the 2 tribes, or even start with 3 tribes and then swap to 2. Just, I think the point is that we just want something different, because 6 in a row gets to be a lot. Because you could look at even old Survivor, and I don't want to even get into Jeff's interview where he's like, we don't have time for a swap. And I'm like, you had time in a 60-minute season. You have time for a swap, Jeff. But even in the first 7 seasons still, and like, the first 2 seasons, they didn't swap. They swap in season 3. They swap in season 4. Thailand, they don't swap. But then they swap in Amazon, but they don't swap in Pearl Islands. Like, Jeff, you figured out in the past how to have 7 in a row where you did something different, where it wasn't the same. You've now had 6 seasons of the same, with the exception being 45, where you did have a swap, but ironically, nobody really swapped. So it's like
swap, right?
we need something different, Jeff. Whatever it looks like, just give me something different next season for 47.
Yep, agree there. And then another big aspect of before the actual challenge here, we had Hunter getting his idol in the Beware advantage. I thought I actually, before we even get into him finding it, I think it is somewhat unfair that you're at a major disadvantage because like technically it was like once your tribe loses, then you could follow the steps and get the advantage, but it's only once your tribe loses. And if your tribe doesn't lose, then there'll be still an opportunity to get it. Let's be honest with ourselves. You're at a major disadvantage if your tribe keeps winning for this, because even like they're presenting you that opportunity. Hunter, it looked like he had 10 minutes before, and they were like, oh, you only have until they get to camp to do it. Well, now what are you supposed to do? Like, you have 10 minutes, whereas if your tribe just lost, then you would have had like 3 hours to do it. So I think that was a little bit interesting. I thought it was a little bit unfair, but like, why are you being why is it against you that your tribe keeps winning? Like, why do you only have 10 minutes to do it compared to the others that they lost and they had 3 or 4 hours before tribal to do it? But crazy that he actually got the idol. I thought for a sec he wasn't going to find it. But he got it. It was right on the stairs. He was digging for the key. I thought he played it off really well, that he was just like sitting there. Like Liz went up to him and he like didn't like blink, just was like, went with it. And Soda and Venus arguing. I mean, they're arguing. That was a great scene, them arguing in the background. But he still didn't have a vote from the journey because he did not finish that challenge, but he was able to get the idol. So shout out Hunter. I just thought that, shout out to him. I thought that the whole thing was like, he almost got screwed over by just a weird thing that shouldn't be, but it was interesting.
Yeah, no, happy he found it. Like you said, it was a great scene. Just seeing him trying to like dig around like underneath him, and then behind him, Soda and Venus are arguing for like the umpteenth time. That was really fun. And you're right, it kind of put him at a disadvantage where he only had a few minutes compared to somebody having a lot of time. And I think that's another reason, not just for these Beware Advantage things, but also just for tribe, dynamics. I've seen a lot of new era people, like, whether it's like Marianne or Evie or whoever, saying on like Rob's podcast, like, because you want to see where tribe lines are, it's really important to go to tribal like at least once before merge. And we see what's happening. Nami hasn't gone to tribal yet, like by themselves, and they have so many cracks. Like, I feel like, I don't want to say intentional Matt Singh, like you shouldn't like, knock yourself down to 2 people, but like, I feel like you should go to tribal at least once to really kind of help you see where the lines are in the game. Really quickly, Dylan, before we move on, since we didn't podcast last week, what was your quick reaction to Hunter's task last week? Because I feel like you and I would have crushed that challenge last week. Easiest journey ever.
Yeah, it was the easiest challenge ever. Like I was in look, and I'm not even like, you are a Survivor encyclopedia. You remember votes. You remember. I don't remember boot orders very well. I could like think about it for 5 minutes and be like, I think it was this. I think it was then this person. In terms of actual seasons,
Numbers, yeah.
In terms of actual season numbers, I mean, come on, that's the most basic Survivor knowledge you could possibly. It wasn't even like winners of this season. It was literally just the season numbers, just in order. So it was the easiest challenge of all time. I was pretty surprised that he didn't get it, but I think his story was pretty funny, that he's like, I watched them all out of order, so I don't like remember, which is I guess somewhat valid. But you would think that a person that builds Survivor challenges would be able to put the seasons in order. So it was pretty funny. But I also bet you that out of the 18 people on this cast, how many do you think would be able to do that challenge?
Okay, so I saw some of the cast. Well, first of all, I saw past cast members like Brandon and other people being like, "Oh my god, if I got this, I would have crushed it." People from this season, I think Jelinski, because I know he's a super fan. Charlie. I mean, we saw in the episode, Soda's a super fan. She said, so I would think maybe 4. I would say maybe 4 of 18. Maybe
you think only 4 would be able to do it?
I don't think this is a cast of like super fans and nerds. I think this is a very like weird cast. Maybe like 4 or 5. I don't know.
Yeah, I think maybe I think my guess is that there's probably more with the knowledge that we just haven't like been let into yet. So maybe like half. But I think in other seasons past, like last season, I feel like,
oh my god, yeah,
would have been like most of the cast would have been able to do it pretty easily.
Yeah.
So it was interesting. Maybe I'm curious if they like knew that not a lot would be able to do it, so they were like, "This is the season we're going to drop this into." But it was, yeah, that was interesting for sure. All right, so yeah, and okay, so one other thing about this Mergatory is that it's like, at least I don't even remember if this happened at the other few. Like I think maybe it didn't for a few seasons, and then it did. Or no, maybe it has in every single New Era season. They had like that time that they were at the camp, but not merged yet before the challenge. You know what I'm talking about?
So wait, I'm sorry, you're saying in this
like,
new era,
like they all went to Nami camp, right?
Yeah.
And then they went to the challenge, but they all had time to like talk before the challenge even happened, which is like, it's a little weird the way that plays out, in my opinion. I think they should just all go and just like do the for this, it feels like like they're not merged, but they're talking. And then you had that interesting scene between Q and Mariah, which I know everybody's talking about, where she said like Aubrey was my favorite player. Then Q is like, oh, Aubrey, what a threat, needs to go, that was hilarious. It's so funny. I'm so happy. I may have said it in this podcast. I may have said it a few weeks ago. You'd have to scroll back.
Okay.
If not, then I probably said it to my brother, like you, at some point.
Yeah.
Mariah reminded me of a carbon copy of Aubrey. So I was dying laughing when she was like, Aubrey's my favorite player. I was like, oh, I mean, the most obvious thing ever. They're like the same person, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But that was so funny that Q took that as like a huge threat, as if like every like half the people out there probably have like Tony as their favorite player, someone like who dominated the game, any winner, you know. So it was hilarious that out of everybody, Aubrey, and he was like, biggest threat needs to go.
I'll go back and look. I feel like I remember you saying that to me. I don't know if it was over text or maybe it was like in our preseason press. So I'll have to go back and look. That sounds very familiar to me. But it was so funny just to hearing that, because Mariah said in her post game press, like, the way Q's mind works, Q didn't like take that as my favorite player is Aubrey. He took that as, oh, I love Aubrey, and you are Aubrey, so you are a threat. Like Q completely like just warped his mind to be like, no, you're Aubrey, you're a threat, you have to go. And she also was saying in her interview with Rob, she's like, it's such a double standard as well, because then she said to Q, well, who's your favorite player? And he goes, oh, Jeremy Collins. And she's like, oh, okay, well then, so you're saying that your favorite player is a winner who's a 10-0-0 winner in Jeremy, who's amazing, and you're scared of me. Aubrey's great, but Aubrey didn't win. Like, she's like, you should be targeting Q for saying Jeremy. So that was funny.
Q is doing like the Michael Jordan like mental gymnastics, like
exactly.
I took that personally, like type thing. Like he's finding like any single piece of information to create a threat out of somebody, which is so funny.
Yeah, I guess the question is, like, now if this goes forward, if people ask you on a season who's your favorites, you can't say like a threatening winner, because then it's like, oh, you could be a threat. You got to say someone that's like a fun character, like say like Rupert or Coach. Just say something that's a character, but like, oh, I'm not going to be scared of somebody whose favorite player is Rupert or Coach.
Yeah, it is crazy that was so funny. That was a great scene. All right, the immunity challenge. So players were split into two groups. Rock draw like normal, and we had the most lopsided draw, I think, in the history of the show. Teams were Hunter, Tevin, Ben, Tim, Q, and Kenzie. And then it was Charlie, Mariah, Maria, Venus, Soda, and Liz. I mean, I saw that everybody was looking at these. Jeff was like, there's no way this actually happened. I saw a lot of people that were like, just eliminate the rock draw and do like a rock draw who's like a captain, and then do schoolyard pick. That's probably the best way to do it in the future. I also think the odds of the teams ending up like this from a rock draw are like slim to none, and it just so happened to be that. But that was insane and hilarious.
Yeah, like you said, schoolyard pick would be nice, but I think sometimes Jeff just wants the fun drama. He wants the randomness of the game. So I think this kind of worked out fun for him. And also, it was just funny because Tiffany draws the gray rock, so Tiffany has to pick, and she's like, I guess, to be fair, she's like, I guess I'll pick the strong people. But I think, Dylan, regardless of what the tribes were, I think because they just merged, I think she's going to go with what she knows. I think she would have picked whatever team Q and Kenzie were on, whether they were on the same team or like they were on the good team or the bad team. Like, it could have been like Q could have been swapped with Charlie, and Kenzie would have been swapped with like Mariah, and like then Q and Kenzie are on the weaker team now. Maybe Tiffany still picks the strong people, but I just feel like she stays loyal to Yanu and she picks them, just because also, if they win, she's sticking with Q and Kenzie. If she loses and she doesn't go with them, then it's like, oh, Tiffany's the only Yanu on this losing tribe. She's an easy vote. So I feel like you want to kind of hide within your numbers. So I think she made the right choice either way. I will say to you, Dylan, one thing that I liked about this challenge that I would like to see in the future. Did you catch that Jeff said everybody must partake in the puzzle? I thought that was really cool, how it was a 3-segmented dragon puzzle and everybody must partake in part of it. That made it actually really cool.
That was a great addition that I think I'm almost shocked that have they ever done that before? I don't know if have we ever seen that? I'm trying to think.
I've never seen I don't think I've ever seen a challenge where everybody must do the puzzle. I've seen like the targets where everybody must hit a target, but I've never seen like everybody must do the puzzle.
Yeah, that's it. If it is a first, which I think it is, I'm shocked that it hasn't been implemented sooner. Mm-hmm. It is a great addition because, as we know, so many of the players are terrible at puzzles, and you don't want the same people doing puzzles every time. Shout out to the losing group on this. They almost had it. It was really close. I thought for a decent amount of that challenge, I thought that the weaker tribe the weaker group was going to end up winning because you know what Survivor does with the editing tricks whenever they like hype up an extreme amount of like something and then like they're like, oh, this is supposed to happen, but then this is what actually happens. Like they kept saying like, wow, it's really the David versus Goliath here. Like Jeff's like, wow, the tribes are so lopsided. And then like they kind of came back. I was like, oh my God, is this going to be like a huge upset? But I guess Hunter is just an absolute god at puzzles. So I
Yeah.
got at everything were in terms of challenges. So let me just say, I know it's like we had kind of this pre-merge type like heroics from Jonathan in 42. And we were like, holy shit, Jonathan's gonna dominate individual immunity challenges. No one has a chance. And then it didn't happen. He couldn't win. He couldn't really win a challenge individually, and he still got the final 5, but he wasn't really like a threat either because everyone's like, well, social game's bad, so he's not going to win anyway. I think this is a different animal we're dealing with here.
Yeah.
I would not be surprised if Hunter wins like 5 in a row in individual immunity challenges. It would not surprise me because he's literally good at everything. Like if there's a balancing thing, I feel like he could be good at it. If there's a puzzle, I feel like he could win it. If there's something with endurance that you have to do like something physical, he could do it. Like there's not one thing that he is bad at. And I know, look, a lot of these individual immunity challenges do humble you as somebody who's like, if you're really physical and really good at stuff, like the challenges will humble you. Like it will be difficult, but I also feel like he's literally not going to lose a individual immunity challenge. Like there is a chance we see him like get 5, which I believe 5 is still the record, right?
5 is still the record. Yeah.
Right. So I think him tying that is not out of the realm of possibility by any means.
Yeah, no, I think we've said this before. I would be much more scared of a Hunter at Merge than Jonathan because I think Jonathan's body type, like that type of player, and I know he carried the people through the water in that one challenge in 42. That type of body is great for like the tribal challenges where they're very physical. You're lugging a big thing. Jonathan's great for that. I just looked up the stats, by the way, while you were talking. Jonathan, out of like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, out of 9 post-merge challenges, he won 2. So he still won some challenges, but like he didn't win like 5 in a row. I would be scared of somebody like a Tyson, a Mike Holloway, somebody who's not like the biggest guy in the world, but like is good at everything, like good at puzzles, good at balancing. Like Tyson was good at shuffleboard and like hanging on the pole. Like these people that like can do like they're like a jack of all trades, like they're good at like everything. I would be way more scared of Hunter than like Jonathan at the merge. So I think you're right, where people see how good Hunter is at the physical challenges, he's good at the puzzles. I think he's going to be protected by having Tevin as an ally, but like we said this earlier, if you let Venus stick around, Venus is just going to gun for Hunter at this point. So Hunter's got to make sure that he surrounds himself with some like meat shields, and hopefully he's doing that with the Q and Tiffany alliance. So
yeah, that's his best move for sure. I think his alliance with Tevin will be huge because Tevin has huge motivation to obviously keep him in. And you gotta, if you're Hunter, you gotta align yourself with the people that in their best interest. It's in their best interest to keep you as a shield, right? But not admit that to you, like Venus. So like Venus is like, that was the other thing that happened last week. That interaction where Venus was like, I want to keep you in as a meat shield. He's like, well, thanks. Like, don't admit it. But align yourself with people that want to keep you in. But I think it's funny because in recent seasons, like there have been people who have been really good at challenges. But we were always like, it's kind of overblown. Like, are they really going to win out? Like, no, like this is the one situation I think we've seen in the new era where like he legitimately could run the table at some point. So they do have to be careful if you're in the rest of the cast here, because if he loses, I think next week with 2 winners, he has a better chance to win. Like he'll probably do it next week. And then all of a sudden you're at final 10, right? If he let's say he wins, right? It's at 12 right now, right? It's getting whittled down to final 10 next week.
Yeah.
So let's say he wins next week because 2 winners, you get whittled down to final 10. Let's say he wins the one after that. So now he's at final 9. Let's say he loses the one at final 9. You have to seriously consider vote. Like you may have to vote him out there right away, because if you let him survive 9, all of a sudden you're at 8 now, and it's like, well, there's, because of the final 4 fire making, there's only so many challenges left, and it's just like, you know, you don't want to get him. You can't risk him going to even fire at the end. Like, he'll win that. Like, you gotta. Then it's like, all right, you're already at 8. Now it's like, all right, he just has to win four more in a row, and then he's right there. So they really got to be careful with Hunter, because I do think that we haven't seen this in a while, where I really do feel like it's possible that he wins every challenge.
Well, and he has an idol. So when you think back to like
Right.
Worlds Apart with Mike, Mike basically won the 5 in a row, and the one or whatever. And I think Mike won 5 total, not 5 in a row. But the one Mike didn't win, he then just used his idol for. So like basically, to your point, you let Hunter get to 8, and he starts winning like 2 or 3 in a row. Oh, he misses one, he's just going to play his idol.
Right.
So
And I didn't even realize, when I was doing that, I completely forgot about his idol. Right. So
yeah.
It is going to be hard to get him out. I do think Hunter is going to go far, strictly because of like, if you're Hunter, I mean, that idol is just so huge, because you're getting shots thrown at you like multiple times right away. So I think it's going to be interesting for him, but I'm excited to see how it plays out. But yeah, back to the immunity challenge. Really good challenge. Shout out to the losing team for even making that close. I really thought they were going to do it for a sec, but yeah.
I think that's why like it was so good that they did everybody do the puzzle, because it provided the most drama. And we always say the puzzle's the great equalizer. Like, a tribe could dominate the physical portion, but they could mess up the puzzle and they can lose. This was perfect, where the men's team plus Kenzie basically gets to the puzzle first because they're plowing through. Then, because everyone has to do the puzzle, I think it was Kenzie and Ben. I don't know who did the middle portion, but they blow a lead and then they fall behind. And then finally, once they finish, and then Hunter kind of carries them to the end. So like this, everybody doing the puzzle was really great, because even the strongest tribe was about to lose if Hunter didn't save them, because 2 people mess up the puzzle. So I feel like going forward, like, I know Jeff has now changed the sit out rule, where like, you can no longer sit out like 2 episodes in a row. Like, regardless of episodes, you must always rotate. I feel like going forward, they should always have like, maybe not like every puzzle, but like every few episodes, everybody must do the puzzle. So
Right. Yeah, agreed with that. It really was a great addition. And then we have the merge feast, right? And this is always so interesting, especially even in Mergatory, like, where we just see like there's only a certain amount of people that are available to be voted out, and then like 3 different dynamics at the merge feast. Like, all right, who's in the bottom of your tribe? Who's in the bottom of your tribe? And then you have Siga, who is like refusing to throw out a name, which, by the way, I really like bad gameplay by them to be so hesitant in throwing out a name. Like, you just have to, like, and you literally have somebody that is on the bottom. Like, you left somebody out of a vote last week. Like, it's an easy name to throw out. Just do it. As soon as you like be like, I don't really know. We are really tight. Like what you think is what it is. Like, we are tight. Everybody's great. We're all friends. Like, that is, you're not only alienating yourself, but you're also just making yourselves a bigger threat. So they finally, Tim was like, it's Mariah, but it took them way too long to finally admit that.
yeah, no, they don't. I don't think Siga played this well at all. They were too tight for too long, and then even once they said Mariah's name, they weren't like, yeah, no, we would consider getting rid of Mariah. They were like, okay, we'll throw Mariah's name out, but we still think Venus should go. Like, this is why I wanted to give credit to both Tevin and Charlie in different moments, because Tevin at that merge feast is like, yeah, I'll say Venus's name. Like, obviously, she's former Nami, but we're at the merge. I want people to know that I'm open to options in this game. I'm not going to be closed-minded. And if they're seeing that I'm willing to throw Venus's name out, that shows that I'm somebody that you can work with. And then Charlie himself later is like, I don't want Mariah to go, but I don't want people to think that I'm Siga strong and I'm not going to work with them. So if Mariah has to go, I'm okay with that. So I want to give them credit. But like, to your point, when it comes to Ben and Tim and them, it's like, you're so stuck on your former tribe, and maybe this is what Jeff wants as a product of like no swaps, but you're so stuck on your tribe that like you are kind of closing off people, even like Tiffany and Q, who are swing vote people, where they're not going to work with you now because there's no way they're going to break through your cracks.
Yeah. I think the way Tevin played it that is the ideal way to play
Yeah.
it. You have to throw out a name and be like, I'm open to all options. Like, it is the merge. Like, you gotta extend an olive branch in some way. You can't just be like closed off at the merge feast. And now I think like Siga, I know everyone had Venus as a target this week, and like I do think that she is going to be a huge target again this week. But at the same time, it's like I do think that the rest of the people out there view Siga as all massive threats, like that they have to just get rid of all of them. So it almost made it like there was that, and there always is. It's like with the 3 tribe, it's like, all right, the tribe that gets whittled down all the way is like they're the middle people. It's like the same thing as season 44, where Carson, Carolyn, and Jam Jam, they were like the middle 3, and they kind of just bounced back and forth.
Yeah.
Or like chose a side for a few votes, and then they could go the other way. Like, that's kind of what it was going to be here with the Yanu 3, and it was like it made their decision like a no brainer that they have to vote out of Siga, like because they did this. So it was definitely interesting that Siga acted like that at the merge feast. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that because we covered like a lot of the pre-vote stuff earlier on in the podcast.
Oh,
is there anything else that we left out of this
episode? I have 2 quick things, and then if you want, when we wrap up, because I don't think we have any questions, we could always jump ahead to next week, and we can look at who might be in danger in this split thing. 2 quick things. I think one, going back to Venus pushing Charlie, we already talked about this, where it's like if you are in the non-safe people of Mergatory, you should not be pushing a name. You should just kind of put your head down and just try to survive. I think her other problem, Dylan, is that she kind of framed it like a woman's issue. She kind of was like, I'm not going to get rid of the girls, which obviously Tiffany and people would have been like, I'm okay with that. But that was like, if you're Q and Tevin and you're the guys, that's only going to further want you to get rid of Venus. So I feel like if Venus went to Soda and said, hey, Siga's got to go, they're pushing Mo, but we can get rid of Mo whenever. Like, Charlie is a dangerous player, and she let Soda maybe run with that to Tevin. I'm wondering if Tevin maybe would have planted some seeds with Hunter. I feel like if Venus framed it differently than like, let's keep the girls, I think that could have maybe helped more. I don't think Charlie was going to go anyway, but that would have, I think, been a better approach. Do you agree or no?
Great point. I'm happy that you brought that up. Yeah, and again, I don't want to like focus on tweets too much, but she was like very like heated that they were like, she was like, oh, like they're just misogynistic because they wouldn't do like, look, come on, like they're in the right, like Q and Hunter, like they're in the right mindset for being they're in the right mindset for being worried about her wanting to keep the girls, because then it does become a concern. Like you have no like if they start to quietly keep the girls, like, and it becomes a thing, like yes, it is absolutely threatening. It is like we saw in not that I don't want to like go back to comparing like the great, like elite seasons or elite gameplay to like this. Yeah. But, at the end of the day, like the most iconic alliance all time was a women's alliance, right? So no matter what, even if it's like not valid, like, oh, there's no way that they could do that. Like if she's openly admitting like we are trying to do this. So like, all right, well, that's not beneficial to if you're Q, that's not beneficial to you. Like, why should you go along with that? Right. So I think like I have no issue if she like in her mind thought like, oh, I want to keep the girls, but for her to like openly admit it to the guy, like openly admit it, like I refuse to vote a girl. Like, come on, like what? Yeah. Why are you admitting that's just, it's bad gameplay to frame it like that, right? So I think you just gotta like be like, oh, Charlie's a big threat, like he can't be in the game because of this, he can't be in the game because of that, but you can't go back to somebody else and be like, well, like I want to do this. It doesn't work for you, but I want to do it for myself, right? Because then what is the motivation for Q to go along with that, or anybody else to go along with that? That's a guy, right? So it definitely was an interesting move by Venus for sure. I think again, like it was a good idea by her, but the framing was off, like you said.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. And the one other thing I wanted to mention before we jump to maybe just looking ahead to the next episode is Charlie, and it's like you mentioned this earlier, they didn't see 45, but it's kind of funny how some things are kind of similar here. Charlie is the one vote for Venus because Mariah's voted out 10-1 because Mariah plays her shot in the dark and Hunter lost his vote. So the only non-Mariah vote is Charlie, and he throws out Venus to protect against a shot in the dark. And I think this is great strategy from Charlie, although we'll see if it comes back to bite him next week, because we saw last season, everybody votes for Caleb. Shot in the dark hits, Caleb is safe. And then J Maya goes out 10-1, but J Maya voted Emily. So imagine if Jay did the same thing that Charlie did here. Everybody votes for Jay, and Jay throws out Emily's name, and then Emily goes home. I mean, what if this happened to Charlie, where Charlie hears his name, like maybe Q or someone comes to him and says, "Hey, Venus is pushing you." Charlie is smart; he votes for Venus. Because imagine if he doesn't do this, and like Venus is like, you know what, everyone's voting Mo. I'm going to write Charlie's name tonight, and then Charlie goes home. So like, I think this was great gameplay by Charlie as well.
Yeah, great move. Like we said, they didn't even see last season. We saw this like with J Maya. She ends up not throwing a vote out there, and she ends up going home because of it.
Yeah.
Great job by Charlie to protect against shot in the dark for sure. So
Now, I think it's fine though, because like if next week someone's like, "Who was the one Venus votes?" I don't think he'll own up to it. But I also feel like, well, I was gonna say no one can trace it back to him, but I guess you can make the argument that if Venus was saying Charlie's name, it makes sense that he was the one that wrote down her. So we'll see if it comes back to bite him. I'm not sure.
yeah, I feel like if there's that many people left, there's no point in owning up to it. But
yeah,
we'll see.
So next week, let me ask you a quick question before we hop off. We're gonna get the split tribal twist. So we're at the final 12, and 2 people are going to win immunity. So 2 tribes of 6 are going to go to tribal. I guess I would ask you, like, based on the draw, like, of these random groups, who is in like the most danger, I guess, based on who they're with.
So I would say this is a scary episode. So I'm going to say Venus is going to be, if she doesn't win, she's going to be a name thrown out no matter what, based on what we saw this week. This is a scary episode for the Yanu 3, right? This is like if you're all 3 get in the same swap somehow, you're golden, right? But otherwise, there's going to be one person that's probably gets swapped without the other 2, right? So if you're with another person, that's great. If you're like, let's say if you're Kenzie and you get swapped with Tiffany, that's great because you have a number. But then Q is on a 6-person group alone, and he's in big trouble because it's so easy for the other 5 people to just be like, well, Q is on an island by himself. Let's just do the easy vote here. So it's a scary episode for them, I will say. If they could all get through it, then that would be absolutely huge for them.
Yeah, well, again, that's why I actually like the split tribal twist. I like it much more than Mergatory because everybody's vulnerable at some points. But like you're right, it really comes down to who you're swapped with because yeah, Q could be in danger if he's by himself, and Tiff and Kenzie are on the other side. But if this Journey 6 alliance is actually a real thing, and Q is by himself, but he happens to have Hunter and Tevin there, I don't think Q goes. I think Q is perfectly fine if it's Q, Hunter, Tevin, and then like throw any other 3 people you want. He's good. But if Tevin and Hunter are on the other side with Tiffany and Kenzie, and Q's by himself, I think Q's in danger. I think you're right that Venus is a name that could be in danger here. I think Kenzie could be in. If Kenzie is with Q alone, oh, I think Kenzie's in big trouble. Like I think if Kenzie's with Tiffany, she'll be okay, and I think Tiffany can use her social capital to maybe save her. But if it's Kenzie and Q with anybody else, and people are like, "Hey Q, we heard from Banu Kenzie's name. Kenzie's a big threat, right?" I'm not saying Q's going to vote for her, but I could see Q being like, "You guys can vote her. I'm going to stay out of the way." He's not going to throw himself on the line to save Kenzie. So Kenzie and Venus would be the 2 names I'd be the most scared for next week.
That's a great point, and I didn't forget about that, but it is a great point that could happen, right? If Tiffany's on the other side, then he doesn't feel the pressure to keep her in, right? So
it only makes him and Tiffany closer too.
Yeah, I would say the Yanu 3 is a group to watch here for this for sure.
Yeah, I think if I had to say on the opposite side, anybody who's safe, I don't see any situation where Tevin's name gets written down here. I think it's still too soon for Tevin. I think he's still so well insulated. Soda, I think Soda could be in trouble. I think if Soda's with Venus and Venus is saying to like Siga or Yanu, "I'll flip with you to get out Soda," I think Soda could be in danger. But I think Tevin's fine. I think Hunter's fine. And then I think Maria is actually really underrated. I think Maria is really good socially. I think Maria, Tevin, and Hunter are fine. And then I think like Kenzie and Venus are in the most danger.
Yeah, I think that's pretty accurate. I think. Yeah, I feel very good about Maria. All right. Anything else you want to touch on? But
nothing else. I think we did a pretty good job at recapping this Mergatory episode. Like I said at the start, I think, Dylan, we are hopefully in for a great next part of the season. We had to get through a slow slog with the Banu saga, kind of like how 45 had the 2 quits, but then it got a lot better. I mean, think about 45 where we had back to back, like the Caleb shot in the dark, Caleb blindside, Kelly blindside, the Kendra boot was whatever, but then the Bruce blindside. We had a great middle stretch of 45. This was a good episode. I'm really hoping we get some great stuff from 46 next week.
Yep, I'm excited to see it.
Yeah, all right. But with that, we will be back next week. Hopefully, Dylan and I, now that I've gotten through my March, will be on a regular schedule going forward. We'll kind of keep you guys updated, whether it's like still on Sundays or whatnot, but we'll let you know. And with that, we are officially merged. So grab your torches and head back to camp.
Good night.